Great. So welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today, on the line, all the way from Macedonia, I have Katerina Trajchevska. And Katerina, you are the co-founder and CEO of a company called Adeva. And when I read what you do, it says exclusive developers network that partners with companies to scale engineering teams on demand. Your team itself is a 100% remote team of over 50 people. You're also a women in tech ambassador. So we are going to get into all of that, but let's start with, what does your virtual office look like? What do you need to get your work done?
Well, thanks, Lisette, first for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today. My office, so I don't have anything special around my desk, for example. I can work from anywhere as long as I have my headset on. One thing that's very important for me is to turn on my gamma waves. So that's the music I choose to listen. It's because it helps me disconnect from everything around and really focus on the work. So basically, it puts me in a different spot when it comes to working. I like to use Pomodoro, the technique where you work for specific intervals of time and then have a break and then continue, because again, it helps me focus a lot. So I'd say that the things about my virtual office that I can't work without are those kind of virtual things I've set in place to help me focus, to help me be more productive, and just split between home environment and actually starting to work.
So do you have a separate spot then in your home, or do you just work? I mean, I'm sure with COVID, before COVID, where did you work most of the time? Did you have different offices or just one place?
I was working from anywhere, using coffee places, working from home. So I don't have any specific spot that I like to be in to start working. That's why I said, like, these virtual things help me make sure, help me convince my mind maybe that now I'm in the office.
Right. Love it. I love the music part, especially. I'm a big music fan, and I still listen to ambient music all the time while I work, but I was taking care of a puppy for a couple of weeks, and I found the Music for Dogs Spotify playlist, and it turns out that it's just awesome ambient music that not only works for putting puppies to sleep, but also for productivity, apparently, at least for mine. So
I will look it up.
Yeah, it's really good. Super mellow music. Love it. One of those random things you discover when they're doing random things. So I want to talk a little bit about Adeva and what you guys do. So it says that you are an exclusive developers network partnering with companies to scale engineering teams on demand. So why did you start this? Why did you start this, and what do you guys do exactly?
So it was a very organic growth. We started first as freelancers, me and the other co-founder. And back at the time, we didn't have many opportunities for ourselves to grow professionally, to work on something exciting. That's why we actually jumped into freelancing to look for our own work, our own clients. And that kind of grew as we started getting more work that we weren't able to do ourselves. So that's how our team initially grew. And after that, so we were an in-house team working with companies, usually startups who wanted to build their products, but they didn't have the technical expertise. So we were building the full products for them. And as we learned about what their needs were after they started growing, so they wanted more control over the teams. So we decided, okay, now we can provide them with dedicated personnel who can work directly with them from a different office. And that's how we switched to this new model we called it outstaffing, but still people were in our office working with the clients directly. And after that, it just kind of, we felt like we shouldn't limit ourselves to local talent only, because we were also struggling to hire tech talent in Macedonia. And then that's when we decided, okay, we can start working remotely. We can start attracting remote talent from all across the world, and basically started transitioning to this new working environment. So that's how what Adeva is today was born, basically a remote network of engineers and designers as well. working from all across the world. And we partner with companies to help them scale flexibly, to build products faster by working with distributed teams.
So you were then a few years ago working all together in an office in the beginning, and then you
Yes.
transitioned to go remote because you were having trouble hiring people. And so it was sort of is that right? And then so it was a natural progression at that point to
Yes,
start to
that's correct.
transition.
And we also wanted to find some, we felt it was a perk for the employees back then. So we weren't kind of focusing that much on the benefit it had for the business. It came as a side effect really, but it really started like that. And at first we were struggling to put it in place because people weren't used to working remotely, so they all wanted to come to the office. So it was an optional thing. It wasn't all remote at first, and we started with Fridays only. So we had like a remote Friday where everyone could choose whether to work from the office or from home or from anywhere really. And at the beginning, everyone chose to work from the office because they didn't feel productive at home. They didn't have anything in place at the beginning. And it was hard to, I don't know, we had to make them start working remotely just to see how it is. And I think it took us, I don't know, a few months to adapt to it and then start working Mondays remotely. And after a while, nobody came to the office. So after that, we had to introduce Office Tuesday just to be able to hang out with
Ha!
people.
So you went from having to introduce remote Fridays to having to go back to introducing Office Tuesdays to get people to
Yes.
come back. That's amazing. That's amazing. I find that a really interesting story because one, it was hard to get people to go remote in the beginning because people liked the office. And then it was hard to get people to come back to the office. I love it. But in the beginning, some of the specific things that people were struggling with when you were first transitioning, like it was setting up their workspaces at home or getting the right equipment or security. What kind of specific struggles did people go through?
We were providing the equipment for them, so that wasn't an issue. But I think, yeah, setting up their workspace because, I don't know, people are different. For me, it doesn't make much difference. I can sit on my dining table and work, as I said, as long as I have my headset on. But a lot of the people wanted to have their monitors and their place in the house. Some of them were working from smaller apartments. They didn't have enough room to make their home office. So I think that was the initial struggle. And then over time, they also learned how to make their home space more work friendly. And I think it's also a problem, the disconnect. So when you work at home, you don't know when you finish. You don't know, you don't have a place to go after that. So basically you're at home all the time. You can differentiate what's your working area, what's your lounge area, for example. So it can be hard to adapt to it and to stay productive. But I think over time, these tactics about how to focus at work, like this Pomodoro technique, for example, or using time trackers just to track yourself, basically, not for someone else, but to make sure that you're focused on a single thing at a time. Those are some things that you really need to try to work on, because when you're working from home, it's all it is about making yourself productive so that you don't waste the whole day working on something.
Yeah, it's true. And I think people underestimate how difficult it can be to actually find a workspace that works for you or set up a space that works for you, especially if you don't have a dedicated room for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm somebody like I would have a hard time. I do have a hard time working from all over the place because my focus is really, I mean, it's like, oh, shiny, and I'm over there. So for me, a home office is really luxurious because I can really focus. Everything that I need is in my place. So we all have, so if I didn't have my own space, it would be very difficult for me to be in like a 1-bedroom apartment with a family or a spouse or something like that. So I can only imagine the struggle. So just to say that I think people underestimate the difficulty of actually setting up a productive workspace at home. But thank goodness you did that 2 years ago, because after COVID hit, I mean, it's business as usual, right?
Yes. Nothing changed for us. Everyone was already very used to working remotely, working from home. So we just, I don't know, it's only the social part that you don't get to hang out with people that much. Other than that, everything is the same.
which a lot of other businesses cannot say right now. So just to highlight, actually, the whole remote first strategy for a business is not that you have to have people go remote all the time, but it sure is helpful to have the processes in place
Yes,
when something
exactly.
like, I mean, who could have predicted a pandemic? That's kind of an extreme example, but then here we are. So it's good. So I'm interested in terms of a couple of aspects of what you do. I want to talk about hiring for sure, because you have to get really good at hiring developers if you're putting out these networks of developers
Yeah.
under your name. And I also, but before we get into that, I want to talk about this concept of overworking and the blending of work and life. That's something that a lot of people are struggling with, especially now with COVID, because everybody went remote overnight and we're realizing that, oh my goodness, we do have to actually separate work and life sometimes. Different people to different degrees, of course, but we have to separate work and life to maintain sort of a healthy mental well-being. How do you handle it yourself, and how do you handle it at the companies with employees to keep people from overworking?
So to be honest, I'm still struggling with this, but I'm trying to find ways to, work around it. Mostly what has been working for me lately is to get dressed and to make sure that, okay, I sit down and I work from here. So even though I don't have a home office, I work from the dining room, for example, and I know when I sit there, it's productivity time. I used to work from the couch and that didn't work because then you're there all day. You don't know when it's time for work, when it's time for relaxing. You have your laptop with you all the time, and it's easy to just, okay, I can check this, and then you lost 2 hours, 2 more hours of your day. So that kind of like physical separation is really important. And as you said, the distractions, so having a home office where you don't have distractions, where you don't have where you can really focus on what you're doing is the best scenario. If you can't afford that, then definitely just help your mind understand that it's time for work now, and later it will be time for relaxing. So also don't work from your bedroom. That's kind of really, really bad thing to do. Yeah, I think all of these productivity things that you can think of that would work for you. So like I said, I'm using this, the Pomodoro and Toggle, I'm using Toggle time tracker. So when combining the two, I kind of feel like, okay, now I'm focused on this task only, and I will be working on that until I finish it before I switch to something else. Because a lot of times, you just check email and then you go straight to another direction for an hour. So
It's a
yeah.
rabbit hole. I totally relate to that. Yeah, it's like the shiny thing again. I mean, that's the virtual
Yes.
shiny.
True.
How about with your employees or your colleagues? How do you know when they're overworking, or how does the company deal with that in general?
That's actually a problem that we don't have a solution for it, because everyone is working from different locations and you kind of can't track how everyone is doing all the time. We do have one-on-one meetings with everyone where we discuss things. So for example, when they start feeling burnout or overwhelmed with work, they have the chance to talk about it, and then we discuss it with the clients and see whether we can do something about it. So we use Slack as well for constant communication with the team. So it's communication essentially. So you need to be open with everyone and talk not only about work, but also to be friends with people, so that you can understand whether they have problems and whether they need some assistance both with their work or with the work-life balance and everything. Other than that, it's not like in an office where you can see someone working or not, or staying late in the office. It's not the case here.
Yeah, and I think actually it really falls onto it's a combination of individual responsibility and then just taking care of each other as a community. And it falls a little bit more on the individual responsibility, because in the office you're more easily a community in that, like in person, it's sort of you can see stuff, and people come into, like I'd go into the office and if you're crying, people immediately know. Online, I can just put on my glasses or some eye drops or something and nobody really has to know. So yeah, so I agree. It's individual responsibility of taking care of ourselves, but then also just communication with our team members and checking in. And I really like the one-on-ones in particular. I think that they're hard to do. It takes a lot of time, but I think for any manager or anybody leading teams, that it's time well worth spending. So I wanted to get into hiring, and then I want to talk about women in tech, but I don't want to run out of time. But I'd like to talk about hiring. Like, how are you finding people to work with, and then how do you know that how do you know that they're good? How do you hire people?
Well, for us, that's the core of our business. So we're working, improving operations, improving basically our resources. Everything is around the hiring. So we make sure that we have a good process around it. We apart from the hiring and attracting people for remote jobs, we also want to create a community where people can, as I mentioned earlier, grow professionally and find opportunities apart from the job they're working on. So basically, we've created a speakers network where people can start speaking at conferences. We help them with the application process, with the presentation and everything. And through that speaking engagements, we've been attracting a lot of engineers as well, because when they see you on an international developers conference, for example, you're setting up an example that they want to follow. So a lot of applicants come that way. And then we also have this usual process of reaching out to potential candidates, setting up ads, using all different online platforms for it. So we built a platform at Adeva for, where people can register, sign up for potential job opportunities. And we have new applicants daily over there. So we have rigorous process of reviewing everyone. After they come to us, we are interviewing for, personality, communication, because everyone is working directly with clients, so they need to have great English skills and communication. That's step one. And after that, we have a process for reviewing their technical skills. Maybe sometimes it's reviewing some piece of code that they worked on, technical interview with one of our leads. Sometimes they have some tasks they need to go through. So it depends on the position with the client when we're talking about the whole network. And when talking about our internal team at Adeva, we're also applying some of the same practices, but we try to keep the team more localized. So a lot of our core members are from Macedonia, so that we can also sometimes hang out in person and meet for non-virtual team building, which can also be helpful when setting up the connection between the members.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I fought against team building or in-person getting together when I worked on a remote team for years. And then finally we got together for a team retreat, and it changed everything. It was amazing. We'd worked together for years before that. And then one night in Lisbon, all drinking and dancing on the town, changed everything about our team. It was amazing. I was like, okay. I mean, I get it. So it is really important to get together for that. Okay. So before we end, I still have lots of questions, but I definitely want to get into this women in tech, because it says on your LinkedIn, you are an ambassador for the Global Women in Tech Global Movement. Tell us about what that is. And I mean, I think people can guess why it's important, but I'm kind of curious, because I have the same thing. I ask a lot of women to come on this podcast, and more women say no than men do. And it's frustrating, because I think, I know you have something good to say. Don't worry, I'll make you look good. That's my job, right? That's what I want to do. But yet there's still a hesitation of coming and sharing the knowledge, because maybe it's not perfect or anything. So I don't know if you experience the same thing. But first, let's dive into women in tech and what it does, and then we'll talk about your experiences being a tech woman yourself.
Sure. So yes, Women in Tech is a global movement, and I think right now we are in 15 countries across the world. So it was started by Ayumi. She's a wonderful person from France. And then how I met her is I got an award for Adeva for most inclusive tech company 2 years ago. in Lisbon on the Web Summit. So basically, they organized this amazing awards just to promote more women who do business and in different sectors. And they had this different titles for different awards they had in place. It was really, really well organized. And that's when I got introduced really to the movement. And after that, we discussed, I told her that I want to open up a chapter here in Macedonia. And we said, okay, great. I partnered with another, Monica, she's another ambassador for Macedonia as well. So together we founded the movement here. We had an amazing opening event. And this is really happening in all these different chapters in 15 countries so far. And it's not that old, really. It's been existing for 2 years, but we've had some amazing growth since then. Last week we organized 24 hours conference, virtual conference. So it was covered from on all different continents, from Australia to Europe, and a lot of amazing guests were, sharing their stories about issues, challenges they face in technology or in entrepreneurship. A lot of women with success stories to share, and also a lot of panels and working sessions. It was really very, very useful. So the whole existence of the community is basically to support women to join STEM first, to embrace entrepreneurship and start working for themselves, encourage them basically through sharing stories, through various workshops and conferences like this. So that's the story behind it.
Love it. And what do you think is stopping women now? I mean, we know historically what's stopping, but in what you're seeing, like in the recent future, when you're talking to people, what is the hesitation now in terms of jumping into STEM or tech?
I think, well, it was for me too, because I was signing up for university around 10 years ago. And back then it still felt like a male profession. So kind of like you're not thinking about it. Lately, things have changed, but I think still the young girls are not that keen to working with technology. Maybe it's the early education or what it comes from home, because girls are playing with Barbie dolls and boys are breaking up toys and then setting them up together. So kind of like how you're growing. And I'm always saying that I think what would make the greatest difference is buying Lego instead of Barbies to girls, and teaching them to think, to assemble things, and then it's the whole mindset. We can dig into how biologically different we are, but essentially it's the environment, I think, and what we've been working with all throughout our childhood and through the whole education before we decide our future.
Yeah, it is for sure not a simple answer, and we're not going to solve it here. It's just I'm seeing the same thing in terms of the podcasts and people, and I'm also seeing there's also amazing women out there who are like role models. So it's good. At least now we have the opportunity to bring people forward with a support network. I think we raise everybody up, and that's always the goal. So indeed. So there's another thing that I wanted to, one of the last questions that I wanted to ask you about was advice for people who are starting out and looking for jobs as developers. Maybe we can even specify it to women developers, but no, let's keep it general. Like advice for people who are starting out and looking for work. Like you've hired a lot of people now. Like what would you tell people when they're looking for remote work? Well, what advice would you give?
So we are asking people to apply with LinkedIn or any online resume they have, just to make things as easy as possible for them. And oftentimes,
which I love, sorry to interrupt, but I love, because people have asked for CVs and things, and I'm like, a CV? Like who has anything but LinkedIn these days? So it seems really old fashioned, but okay, sorry to interrupt.
Well, developers are not that keen of LinkedIn, so they often, But anyway, so when they apply with LinkedIn, they just send a link without having an up-to-date profile. Like their previous job positions are listed, but nothing else can be seen from it. And because we get a lot of application, oftentimes we end up declining people because they don't have enough info on their profiles. So, even if it's easy for you, don't be lazy, I would say. Just, make sure that all the information that you provide is up to date, and that anyone can see whatever they need from it. That's like the first piece of advice for applying in general. For women, I would say that, that saying that they taught us to be perfect, and they taught our brothers to be brave. So kind of like all women are trying to tick all boxes when applying for a job. And if they see something they don't understand, they get discouraged. And a lot of times in job ads, you see a lot of things that are, only good to have and not that important. So I think the approach over here is different between man and woman, and that is one thing why there are so much more male applicants than female. So I would say just, if you see anything that would fit to your qualities or your experience, just apply for it. If they call you, that's great. Otherwise, you don't lose anything.
Love it. So be visible online. Don't make it hard for the person who is employing you to find more information about you. That's seems pretty straightforward. I'm curious, what percentage of applications do you reject solely on the basis of their LinkedIn profile says almost nothing?
Well, I would say over 50.
50%. That's incredible. Okay, you people looking for jobs, you just got a huge tip, especially as a developer. I mean, you want to have some sort of a footprint online. It doesn't have to be LinkedIn. It can be GitHub, or anywhere else that you're doing projects, basically. But just have a place so that you can see what people have worked on and who they are. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to have like your whole life history online or anything. But show your skills. Okay, so that's a shocking number. Anything else like that that's a little bit that was shocking for you when you were first hiring people, that you're like, oh, I didn't expect X?
In terms of women in tech, I would go back to it. So we were analyzing numbers once, and it was like 12% only of all applicants were female. And then it was, really a low number. So we decided to start doing something about it. And that's when I got more engaged around, improving the whole process for women. And then women in tech, we also organized a boot camp for females who were finishing up school, but then they decide their career path, and then they don't end up choosing technology. So why is that? We try to motivate them to continue the career they started. So, it's kind of like, when you dig into numbers, it can get quite interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of women who are taking care of families, and I only took care of a puppy for 3 weeks, but I have to say, I have no idea how people with kids do it, like to have a career and taking, so huge respect for all the parents out there. Like, I had a small taste of it, and I was like, no, it's way too hard. So to be fair, there's a lot of that going on also. Somebody's got to take care of kids or family, and things like that. So it's a big issue. We won't do it here. But I would say, women, don't try to be perfect. Just go for it. Like, go for it and see what happens. That's what the guys are doing, and seems to be working. And it's a strategy. I have a quote. Maybe it's a good way to end this. I have a quote that always just says, like, if they're going to hand me the mic, I'm going to step up and sing. So I'd say just go for it, even if you don't. And I can't sing, if anybody's heard it. So, but if you hand me the mic, I'm going to go for it. So I would say let's have more of that attitude out there and just try things. It's a more fun world that way anyway. Well, Katerina, it has been a real pleasure to talk with you today. I took copious notes, as you can see here, and I look forward to sharing with the audience. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, until next time, everybody, be powerful.